The Chicago Bears named Caleb Williams one of their team captains for the 2024 season, showing that the leadership transition from Justin Fields and last year's team has gone as smooth as any of us could hope for.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. On the show today, we look at the Bears' decision in setting their team captains for this upcoming season, headlined by a rookie, Caleb Williams, being a captain on this team, the first Bears rookie in recorded history, although that goes back to 2007, and sort of how this all encapsulates the leadership transition from Justin Fields last year, but also with some of the other roster turnover this Bears team has had. There are a few new captains that have been added into this mix and new voices and leaders that are having to take over in those roles. We'll use that to also look at how the players Ryan Poles have put on this team, many of the leaders especially, come from experience elsewhere in the NFL where they've won and seen what winning and success looks like, so that they can then apply that to the Chicago Bears and know the difference between a franchise that's doing the things that lead to winning and doing the things that don't lead to winning. And then we'll wrap up with a look at this Chicago Bears offensive line, where the quote going around all weekend from Ryan Poles was praising this Bears offensive line. I think there's a little bit more to it than the popular headlined quote here that I think we need to just dig a little bit deeper. But the big news of Labor Day, I hope you had a nice day off for the holiday weekend. But the big news over the Labor Day weekend and Labor Day itself was the Bears naming their team captains for 2024, which, okay, maybe normally or on the surface, you might think, okay, kind of not necessarily who cares, but how big of a deal is it who they pick as team captains? The players vote on it, and Matt Eberflus tallies up the votes and hands out the captainships that way. And for this season, the Bears have not one, not two, not three, not four. The usual 5 captains is kind of what the Bears and most teams do. This year, it's going to be 8. 8 team captains for the Chicago Bears. Caleb Williams, obviously the headliner we've been talking about here, along with DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, Mercedes Lewis, the veteran tight end. And then you've got the 2 linebackers, Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards, Kevin Byard, and Jalen Johnson. So a quarterback, a wide receiver, 2 tight ends, 2 linebackers, a corner, and a safety. 8 captains. I don't know yet, and Matt Eberflus didn't say how they're going to handle the coin toss, because I don't think all 8 players are allowed to go to midfield to do the coin toss, but you typically send your captains out there. So I don't know how they're going to decide which captains get to go out for the coin toss or whatever, but clearly all those names we talked about are guys you would expect, guys who we think of as leaders on this roster. But a few things stand out about that. Obviously, Caleb Williams being a rookie, and the Bears have been tracking, recording their team captains since 2007, and that dating back has not ever had a rookie quarterback. I realize that's not that long, and so it's possible, longer ago, the Bears have had a rookie team captain in those trends, but for now, he's the first ever. And it shows how well he is taking to the locker room and how well his teammates are taking to him, because this was voted on. This was not Matt Eberflus and Ryan Poles forcing a leader or a captain onto a locker room and saying, I pick the captains, I pick this guy because we need to prop him up and make him a leader on this roster. No, the teammates, in knowing Caleb Williams for just 4 months since he was drafted, a little bit less. All of us already, he is a guy that they choose to lead him and to lead them. And it's been a quick transition from less than a year ago, probably 6 or 7 months ago. We heard so many different Bears players, DJ Moore, I think Jalen Johnson, others, talk about how much Justin Fields was loved in the locker room and how he was their leader and that his teammates, Cole Kmet as well, sticking by him, wanting to be there and have him be a part of this team if it were up to them. And it led to all these questions about, okay, how will this locker room handle the leadership transition from Justin Fields to Caleb Williams? And clearly, and I think a lot of the credit belongs to Caleb Williams, but clearly Caleb has been able to step in and play this the right way, listen when he's supposed to listen, talk when he's supposed to talk, not go too far out of turn or rush too fast or try to be too much or try to be anything really more than just himself in this process. And that's how you endear yourself and work hard and show your desire to win. And as we expected, the team really took to that and is already full believers in Caleb Williams. But I think it speaks to a broader trend if we want to step back, even just transitioning from last season to this season, beyond the quarterback position, of leadership in the Bears locker room. When we think about some of the guys the team got rid of this offseason, Eddie Jackson, leader of the secondary, captain last season. His replacement, already a captain in his place, Kevin Byard. Obviously, Justin Fields, leader of the locker room, captain last season. His replacement, Caleb Williams, already a leader, already a captain. It's been very quick for them. And I also think about guys like, Cody Whitehair, who was not a captain last season, but the Bears had rotational captains for their fifth captain. They had 4 permanent and then one guy that would change every week. And Whitehair was a guy who is in that mix, who was one of the leaders up on the offensive line. And now you've got guys like Ryan Bates and Coleman Shelton stepping in and being bigger voices in that room. You've got DeAndre Swift being a bigger voice in the running back room. Like, you've got these people, these players who have come in and taken over and been able to lead in the ways that other players were here and leading last season. And you don't always expect one off season, really less than 6 months of these guys being here, for them to really be able to settle in alongside the guys who are already established, right? I mean, among those 8 captains, a number of them have been here before. DJ Moore, Jalen Johnson. Moore was also a captain Moore and Tremaine Edmonds were captains last year and now captains this year. So those 2 are the 2 that were the carryovers from the 4 last year to the 8 this year. But then guys like Jalen Johnson and DJ Moore and even Mercedes Lewis, like they've at least been here. So like you have a certain leadership that's established, and then you've had a bunch of new guys come in, and you'd think there could be some, I don't even want to say tension, but just, awkwardness and difficulty transitioning there, where the guys who were here are used to things being done one way, and the new guys come in and maybe think things should be done slightly different or communicated differently or handled a little bit differently. But this is what the Bears kept Matt Eberflus for, right? Like, Matt Eberflus is not the head coach of the Bears for his genius scheme and play calling. He's here to be the team chemistry, team culture, locker room manager, CEO type guy. And he's been able to so far execute that very smoothly with a difficult quarterback transition and some difficult veteran leadership transition. And it really, I think, reflected in this maybe overly large group of captains, but still this group of captains nonetheless reflects how the leadership of this Bears locker room has transitioned. When you look at a lot of the players in this leadership group and the other leaders on the team that aren't captains, there's a couple of themes that stand out among that group. Most importantly, and I think it was Jalen Johnson that pointed this out at his press conference, a lot of these guys who have come to the Bears from other organizations all won a lot at their other organizations and know what winning looks like. So I want to kind of look at how across this Bears roster, you have players with some history of a lot of success in their football careers. Next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. And the reason why it's America's #1 sportsbook is because they always have something new and fresh for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers, not just new ones, but all new and existing FanDuel customers, can bet $5 and get a free 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. You just need to bet $5 on any of your favorite sports. Bears are 4.5-point home favorites against the Tennessee Titans this week. But you can also bet on baseball rounding into the playoffs in the very near future, soccer, tennis, the combat sports, WNBA, you name it, they have it all at FanDuel, all in an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So to get your free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV, visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. This Chicago Bears team and the players who have been here a while haven't experienced much winning. And so they don't have some of that foundation to fall back on and know exactly what a winning organization and winning football looks like and what it doesn't look like, because all they've seen is not winning football. And it provides then so much more value when the players Ryan Poles has brought in to add to his own drafted players are bringing a lot of winning and success and, like, specifically here, playoff experience, right? Not just okay, they win 10 games or win their division or whatever, but like multiple guys who have been to or won Super Bowls. A lot of players who go to conference championship games, right? Not just, okay, that team wins 9 games and sneaks into the wild card round every year, kind of like we've seen the Steelers do for the last handful of seasons, but like, no, guys who have seen what a successful season looks like, what a deep playoff run looks and feels like, and in a lot of cases, what like consistently successful organizations do and look like. And a lot of it has come in the players added this season and certainly, in the last couple of off seasons, but this offseason in particular, a lot of winners added to this Bears team with post-season success. Like Keenan Allen, for example, traded from the Los Angeles Chargers. I was looking back, I'll be honest, okay, the Chargers had a little bit less playoff success over the course of Keenan Allen's career than I would have guessed. They made it through to the divisional rounds a couple of times, but Keenan Allen wasn't there back when they were in some AFC championship games against, usually it was either Tom Brady or Peyton Manning with Phillip Rivers, but still like worked in an organization that was winning a lot of games consistently, getting to the playoffs consistently with a quarterback in Phillip Rivers who had lots of playoff success consistently over time. Like Keenan Allen brings a certain pedigree of like, as long as he was there, the Chargers were always in the mix. They always found a way to charger it up and lose, but like the Chargers were always consistently winning and in the mix. Or you look on the offensive line, Coleman Shelton, your new starting center, won a Super Bowl with the Los Angeles Rams in 2021 and has been in that organization as they've gone on big playoff runs. Like he has seen what a well-coached, well-run organization with the Rams look like, the kind of like daily habits and practice structure and how they game plan, like every little thing that got a team to the Super Bowl, he has seen and been around and can then not only compare what the Bears are doing to that, but then also share those things with the other players at their position and on their side of the ball. Even Ryan Bates, the other center coming over from the Buffalo Bills, like sure the Bills haven't won the big one like Coleman Shelton did, but very few teams do win the Super Bowls. That's not the benchmark here, but the Bills, well, Bates has been there. They've made the divisional round, at least the divisional round, every year the last like 3 or 4 years that he was there. They also went to the AFC Championship one of those years, but obviously didn't make it all the way to the Super Bowl. But like that's a team that has been winning consistently and putting forward postseason runs, that he has a sense of like what that feels like and what that takes. DeAndre Swift with the Eagles, like he's been a guy who saw the playoffs with Philadelphia and has seen the Lions at least turn around. The Lions weren't this good when he was there, but he watched them go from a 3-win team to an above 500 team, much like the Bears are in the process of doing now. Like he's seen that process grow in other organizations to compare here. I'll even throw in Mercedes Lewis. I mean, he's been around the NFL forever, but like, and you think of him as a Jacksonville Jaguar where you don't associate the Jaguars with winning anything. Although he was in Jacksonville the year that Blake Bortles went to the AFC Championship game. I think that was his last year. I know for sure he was on that team, but I can't remember for sure if that was his last year or his second to last year. So he's been to an AFC Championship game with the Jaguars, and then Mercedes Lewis was with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, did 2 NFC Championship games, I believe, with the Packers over his span there. And then, of course, things declined with him in Green Bay. But regardless, like, you've got guys at running back, wide receiver, tight end, and the offensive line that have all had NFL success consistently in terms of winning and being a part of winning organizations. And then defensively, I mean, talk about your captains, all three of your 4 defensive captains. TJ Edwards, coming over from the Philadelphia Eagles, went to the Super Bowl with them in 2022, has gone on deep playoff runs with them. Tremaine Edmonds and the Buffalo Bills. I think Edmonds and Ryan Bates' time with the Bills were exactly the same. I think they both got there in 2019, and then Edmonds left a year earlier, but they were in the same AFC Championship game and the same divisional round playoff runs each and every season on both sides of the ball of a winning organization that has had sustained success recently. And then Kevin Byard comes over as a free safety, where, again, we don't think of Tennessee as a super powerhouse, but in his time in Tennessee, been to the AFC Championship game once, and then 2 other runs through the divisional round. Like, these are teams that are winning playoff games, not just making the playoffs and flaming out right away, but winning multiple playoff games, going on these runs and knowing what it takes to win playoff games. So that if the Bears happen to get to, say, the playoffs this season, yeah, it's going to be a lot of players' first time there. You know, not every single player across this roster has playoff experience, but you're going to be able to go to, all the receivers can go to Keenan and be like, hey, like, what are the playoffs like, man? And everyone can come to Coleman Shelton and Ryan Bates and be like, hey, if we're in the divisional round, like, what is that? You know, what is that like? What is the intensity like? Guys across the defense, you can go up and down this roster and find a lot of playoff experience pretty much everywhere, but the defensive line and like the quarterback room at this point, I mean, I guess cornerback as well. It's a bunch of like the places that are most homegrown have the least winning and success because they've been a part of this organization that hasn't done enough winning and success. But that's part of why Ryan Poles goes out and gets guys that have done the winning and success so that they can bring their winning and successful ways to this team, to this roster, to this organization. And that's why you can really hear Ryan Poles has a lot of confidence in this team and feels like this rebuild he's been organizing is a bit ahead of schedule of even where he thought they might be. But I want to caution him taking his optimism and his excitement too far, because one of the big quotes from Ryan Poles that was going viral in the Bears community, which is not viral, but one that was getting shared around a lot, like, I think it glosses over something important that we need to keep in mind with this group. So we'll kind of look at where we should be excited about the offensive line, but where we also got to make sure we're not getting too ahead of ourselves and setting some more realistic expectations there next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by Gametime, the best way to get tickets for all of your favorite live events. I love using Gametime. I've got the app on my phone. I use it all the time. I go to a bunch of concerts. I'm going actually to see Avril Lavigne and Simple Plan coming up here in a little bit. I saw Green Day with Smashing Pumpkins and Blink-182, and I got all of my tickets on the Gametime app. Plus, I've gotten Bears tickets with Gametime. I've gone to comedy shows, theater events. I mean, you name it, they've got tickets on Gametime. What I love about Gametime is that I know exactly how much I'm going to pay because they have all-in pricing, so there's not any of those added fees that get put on at the end of your checkout that make the tickets cost way more than you thought. And you can see the view from the seat you're buying in the app before you buy the tickets, so you know exactly what you're getting with your purchase. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem that code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. The Locked On Bears podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp provides online therapy that's here to help make you your best self. I do online therapy every single week, and it's a really important part of my own personal mental health regimen. It's why I recommend using BetterHelp. I like to say going to therapy is like going to the gym, but for my brain, right? I go work out because I want my body to be healthy and strong, not because my body's broken, but just because I want it to be stronger and healthier. And therapy is the exact same way for my mental health. So if you've been thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Ryan Poles feels really good about the rebuild of this Chicago Bears team, and he should. We're all excited and optimistic about what this team can do. They're a popular pick on FanDuel to go over their 8.5 win total, and we're excited for what this season's going to bring with Caleb Williams. And part of that excitement or optimism or pride, I think, for Poles was captured in one of his answers to his press conference he had late last week, where, sort of the end of the preseason, but before the start of the regular season, like, let's kind of set the stage for the year type of press conference and evaluate how the offseason as a whole has gone. There was a quote from Poles that a lot of the Chicago media outlets, pulled and put on graphics and was popular on social media, where Poles talked about how he thinks the offensive line can be is going to be or can be special this season, and that it's the most and the best depth he's ever had on his offensive line, and a player said it's the deepest, strongest room or whatever he's ever seen in an offensive line room. And so I want to play the full clip here so you can get all the context. And then I want to talk about why, yes, it's a good thing, but let's not get too carried away here.
You got a number of guys banged up on the offensive line today. We saw Bill Murray go off. How comfortable are you with the depth you have at that position?
This is the best depth I've ever had. Actually let one of the guys go on cut downs and was like, man, you did an excellent job. I wish, we could keep you here. He's like, this is the deepest room I've ever been a part of. So we have more versatility, more depth. We got 10 guys, so I feel comfortable. Obviously you want your starting 5 to be healthy and ready to go, but I feel more confident in the depth of our line than I ever have before.
Right. Having really strong offensive line depth is important, and the Bears do have much improved offensive line depth from a year ago. That is undoubtedly a good thing Ryan Poles has been able to do on this group. But the depth of the offensive line isn't necessarily what's going to win and lose you football games. Yes, it's good to have good depth, because if you need to count on a backup player to come in and fill in for, half a game if somebody gets hurt and, misses the rest of that game, or even a couple of weeks, and you just need somebody to patch you over for a game or two to get by, having great offensive line depth can be huge. But the problem with the Chicago Bears offensive line is that they might and have consistently recently had to rely on offensive line depth more than they should and more than other teams. And it's to the point where depth is great, but if you have to rely on that depth all the time as starters, then they're just bad starters, right? It's the same as having a crummy starter if you're having to put a backup in for your good starter all the time or frequently enough. And this Bears offensive line has such an injury history that I'm concerned that, yes, having good depth is better than not having depth, but having healthy starters is a lot better than having good depth. And I know that sounds obvious, but we're praising this Bears offensive line as having great depth. They've got good backups. Yes, but if you're having to go to your backups, that means you have bad or worse players on the field, and then overall your team is just going to be worse. And if that's a game, that's fine. It's great to have a great backup like Matt Pryor, who can play guard or tackle, so that if any of your 4 outside guys, sprains an ankle minor in the game and has to come out and just can't finish that game, okay, he can get you by. You can patch it up with Matt Pryor and make it work. But if somebody tears an ACL, I'm not even going to put a name on it, I don't want to put that out in the world, but if somebody, I don't know, breaks a bone or tears some other muscle or has some sort of more serious injury, and then one of your backups has to be a 5 to 10 game starter or whatever it might be, then all of a sudden, okay, it's great to have great depth, but you still have a very below average starter there. You're better off than if you had bad depth, but the bigger problem is that you're missing the starter. No matter how good your depth is not going to be as good as your starter. And so whether that backup is terrible or pretty good, there's still a big gulf between that and your starter. And so if you're missing starters, it becomes a really big problem. And you've got an offensive line right now where Braxton Jones missed a handful of games last season. Tevin Jenkins has missed a handful of games every year of his career. Nate Davis has missed a handful of games the last handful of seasons pretty consistently now. And Darnell Wright and Coleman Shelton, I think, each missed a game last season. That's fine. Almost every player, like very few players play all 17 games anymore, it seems like. Like that's just not something that's going to happen. Miss a game here, your depth is what you count on there. And the Bears, it's good that the Bears have good depth for those couple of games that each guy might miss. But if a guy is going to miss 6 games, the bigger problem is that your guy is missing 6 games. Whether your depth is good or not, you have 6 games of a giant hole of a missing starter. Whether your backup is pretty good or terrible, still going to be the weakest spot on your offensive line, no matter where that injury happens, and it's still a really big hole. So, like, yes, great that the Bears have better depth there. It will absolutely help the team. But it doesn't solve the problem of, hey, your offensive linemen get hurt a lot, and you're going to be in trouble if any of your offensive linemen miss significant time. A game or two, you'll be fine. 4, 5, 6+ games, you're going to have some real trouble here because the Bears' depth is good, but if they were really good, if they were truly starting caliber players, another team would have signed them to be a starter. You know what I mean? Like, sure, you might find a diamond in the rough here or there, but like, these backups didn't sign with the Bears on a veteran minimum contract because they're a top-level starting caliber player who happens to be a backup. No, they're a pretty good backup, but not someone who's good enough to start. You had competitions for a couple of these guys to get in the mix to potentially start, and they didn't win them. They're backups for a reason. So, like, great depth is good. Not saying it's a bad thing. Not saying the Bears shouldn't be glad with their depth, but, like, bigger picture, healthy starters is a lot more important than whether your depth is good or not. I'll use the quote that, the famous quote from, I think it was Colts offensive coordinator Tom Moore. He was either the OC or QB coach when Peyton Manning was starting in Indianapolis for a long time. They never gave any reps to their backup quarterback in practice during the week. And the offensive coordinator was asked, why aren't you giving the backup quarterback any reps? And he said, if 18's not out there, we're effed. Use the F word. We're effed. And we don't practice effed. And I feel similarly about this Bears offensive line. It's like, yeah, okay, if they're not out there for a little bit, you can be fine. But if Tevin Jenkins misses however many games this season, it's not that the whole line is effed, but then if no one else can get hurt then, and of course everyone's going to get hurt a little bit of time. It's a ripple effect from there. So that's where like everyone's praising the Ryan Poles quote, like, wow, Bears have such great depth. This O-line is going to be special. And it's like, yes, that's very good, but like that doesn't mean this is a top 5 offensive line and that Caleb Williams is going to have perfect protection all season and that the running game is going to have the biggest lanes to run through all season. Like let's be happy about better depth, but like slow down a little bit on like praising this offensive line as fixed, cured, set, good to go, no questions, no concerns whatsoever. If they were healthy for all 17 games, this is going to be a fine offensive line. It's a big if, and not one that I would count on happening this season. I do want to look ahead to, though, what we think will happen this season. And on tomorrow's Locked On Bears podcast, I want to go through season predictions and expectations and kind of what the difference between, like, what would a successful season look like and what would really a failure this season look like, and how I think there is a little bit of some ground in between there. So all that's coming on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Bears. So make sure that you hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Then on Thursday, we will have our first Crossover Thursday podcast of the season with Tyler Rowland from Locked On Titans, and we're going to get the scoop on everything that's changed in Tennessee with the new coaching staff and a lot of turnover on that roster. We'll really get a sense of what kind of matchups are going to be in store for the Bears on Sunday. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen. If you're looking for your second listen, speaking of Tyler Rowland is hosting the new Locked On NFL. Our Locked On NFL podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network is now 2 shows every day. First, the madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso, and then you can stop by the Barber Shop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk in the evening. And I co-host Locked On NFL on Tuesdays. So if you're looking for your second listen today, check out this morning's Locked On NFL with Tyler Rowland. as we break down, boy, what are we talking about today? The Bengals and Jamar Chase, another wide receiver on a team. Oh, the Miami Dolphins and Hill and Waddle and Odell Beckham. We talked about Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. We talked about another quarterback, and I'll find it in a second here. Another team with a quarterback situation. We talked a couple quarterbacks, a couple wide receivers, and then the deepest and strongest rosters in football. I don't know why I'm not thinking of who the other quarterback was that we talked about there. We get all around the NFL here and some of the biggest storylines around the league, and I'm desperately scanning to remember which other quarterback we talked about. But you got to tune into Locked On NFL to find out which other quarterback we talked about, because it was the Pittsburgh Steelers. There it is. We talked about Russell Wilson being named the starter and a captain over Justin Fields. So a little bit of Bears adjacent in there for you. So lots of good NFL talk coming to you twice a day on Locked On NFL with Tyler Rowland and Tony Wiggins. Those guys are the best. They've got great energy, great personalities. I think you'll really enjoy getting more football talk from them. Coming back tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Bears every single day. And every day I'll make sure you get another opportunity to bear down.